Imagine standing in the living room of the only home you've ever known. Your hands are shaking. Your heart is pounding so hard you can feel it in your ears. You've practiced these words for days, whispering them to yourself in front of the mirror, trying to make them sound hopeful instead of terrifying. And finally, they leave your lips. I'm pregnant. The silence that follows is heavier than any scream you've ever heard. It fills the entire room, pressing down on your chest until it's hard to breathe. My name is Sarah. And this is the story of how my own parents disowned me the moment I needed them the most. How I went from being their pride and joy to being told I was no longer their daughter. How I found myself alone, scared, and carrying a child with nowhere to go. And how one person, my older brother, stepped up and saved us both. But 3 years later, when that doorbell rang, everything I thought I had rebuilt was put to the test again. It happened on a rainy Tuesday night 3 years ago. I was 22 years old, freshly out of college, still trying to figure out what adult life was supposed to look like. I had always been the good daughter. The one who studied hard, got good grades, helped around the house, and never gave my parents any real trouble. They used to tell their friends how proud they were of me, how I was going to make something of myself. But one relationship, one mistake, and one positive pregnancy test changed all of that in a single evening. I had waited until after dinner. The rain was tapping against the windows, and the living room light felt too bright, too exposing. My mother was sitting on the couch knitting something she never finished, and my father was reading the newspaper like he did every night. I stood in front of them, my fingers twisting together nervously, and said the words I had been dreading. Mom, Dad, I'm pregnant. First, they didn't react. It was like the words hadn't reached them yet. Then my mother's hands froze mid-stitch. The knitting needles stopped clicking. My father slowly lowered the newspaper, and I watched his face change from calm to disbelief to something much colder, disappointment mixed with anger. You're what? He asked, his voice low and sharp. I'm pregnant, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm keeping the baby. My mother's face went pale. She looked at me like I had just told her the worst news imaginable. Sarah, how could you be so irresponsible? We raised you better than this. We gave you everything: education, a good home, values. And this is how you repay us. I tried to explain. I told them the father had already left the moment I shared the news with him. I told them I was scared and didn't know what to do next. I even said I was sorry for disappointing them. But none of it mattered. My father stood up slowly. His hands were clenched at his sides. You've ruined our family name. What will people say? What will our relatives think? You're no longer welcome in this house. Pack your things and leave tonight. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my knees go weak. Dad, please. It's raining outside. I have nowhere to go. I'm your daughter. My mother wouldn't even look at me. She stared at the floor and said quietly, You made your choice, Sarah. Now you have to live with it. We can't have this kind of shame in our home. I stood there for what felt like forever, tears streaming down my face, one hand resting on my still flat stomach, as if I could protect the tiny life inside me from their rejection. But there was no protection coming from them. That night, I packed 2 suitcases with whatever clothes and belongings I could fit. I walked out into the pouring rain with no umbrella, no plan, and no one to call. The streetlights blurred through my tears as I dragged my bags down the sidewalk, leaving behind the only home I had ever known. I spent that first night in a cheap motel on the edge of town. The room smelled of old cigarettes and damp carpet. I sat on the edge of the hard bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper, wondering how my life had fallen apart so completely in just one evening. The betrayal cut so deep because these were the same people who had once cheered for me at school events, who had bragged about me to their friends, who had told me they would always be there for me. Now I was nothing to them, just a mistake they wanted to erase. The days that followed were even harder. Morning sickness hit me hard and fast. I could barely keep water down some mornings. I had almost no money left after paying for the motel. I tried calling my parents several times, hoping they had calmed down and realized how cruel they had been. Each call went straight to voicemail. One afternoon my mother finally answered, but her voice was cold and final. Don't contact us again, Sarah. You've made your decision. We've made ours. Those words echoed in my head for weeks. I felt completely worthless, unlovable, like I had failed at being a daughter so badly that I no longer deserved a family. Some nights I cried until I had no tears left, curled up on the thin motel mattress, wondering what would happen to my baby if I couldn't find a way to survive. I started looking for any job that would take me, but the moment employers saw my growing belly, most of them turned me away. I was running out of options fast. The fear of ending up on the street with a newborn kept me awake every single night. I felt so alone, so abandoned, that I sometimes wondered if it would have been better if I had never told them at all. But in the middle of that darkness, there was one person who refused to turn his back on me, my older brother, Alex. Alex was 26 at the time. He had always been the quieter one in our family. While I was busy trying to be the perfect daughter, Alex worked as a mechanic and lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. We weren't extremely close growing up. He was 4 years older and had his own life, but he had always looked out for me in small ways. He would fix my bike when it broke, drive me to school when I missed the bus, and quietly stand up for me when our parents were too strict. One evening, when I was sitting on a park bench with my 2 suitcases beside me and nowhere left to turn, my phone rang. It was Alex. "Sarah, Mom and Dad told me what happened. Where are you right now?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the worry underneath. When I told him I was basically homeless and pregnant, he didn't hesitate for even a second. "Stay right where you are. I'm coming to get you. Don't move." That phone call became the first ray of light in weeks of darkness. 30 minutes later, Alex pulled up in his old car. He got out, helped me lift my heavy suitcases into the trunk without saying much, and then drove me straight to his apartment. When we walked inside, I was surprised to see he had already prepared the 2nd bedroom. Fresh sheets were on the bed, and he had cleared space in the closet for my things. "You can stay here as long as you need," he said simply. "No questions. No judgment. This is your home now too." I broke down crying right there in his living room. For the first time since that terrible night, someone showed me kindness without making me feel ashamed. Alex didn't lecture me about my choices. He didn't ask who the father was or why I had let it happen. He just made me a warm cup of tea, sat with me on the couch, and let me cry until I couldn't cry anymore. From that day forward, my brother became my everything. He worked extra shifts at the garage so he could pay the rent and buy groceries without me worrying. Every morning before he left for work, he made sure I had something to eat, even if it was just toast and fruit. When the morning sickness was at its worst and I couldn't get out of bed, he would sit beside me, hold my hair back, and bring me ginger tea to settle my stomach. He never complained. Not once. As my belly grew bigger, Alex started reading pregnancy books in his free time. He learned about prenatal vitamins, what foods were safe, and how to help during labor. He painted the small 2nd bedroom a soft, sunny yellow and bought a second-hand crib with money he saved from his overtime. He even put together a little changing table and stocked it with basic baby supplies. I had never seen this side of my brother before. Growing up, he always seemed a bit distant, focused on his own work and friends. But now he was stepping up in ways I never could have imagined. He became the father figure my baby would need, even though he didn't have to. He treated me with such care and respect that slowly, very slowly, I started to feel safe again. We developed a gentle routine together. In the evenings, after he came home from the garage smelling of oil and metal, we would sit and talk about the future. He would ask how I was feeling, what the doctor had said at my last checkup, and whether I needed anything. Some nights we watched old movies together, and for a few hours I could almost forget the pain my parents had caused. But the hurt was still there deep underneath. I often wondered why my parents never reached out. Not a single message. Not even to ask if their grandchild was okay. The silence from them hurt more than angry words ever could. It made me question everything I thought I knew about family and love. Still, Alex never let me drown in those thoughts for long. He would gently remind me that we were building something new. "It's you and me now, Sarah. And this little one. That's our family." His words gave me strength on the days when I felt like giving up. They carried me through the fear, the loneliness, and the uncertainty of becoming a mother without any support from the people who were supposed to be there. 9 months after that rainy night when my parents turned me away, my daughter Emma came into the world. The labor was long and exhausting. I was scared and in pain, but Alex stayed right there with me the entire time. He held my hand, wiped my forehead with a cool cloth, and whispered encouraging words when I thought I couldn't go on. When the nurse finally placed tiny Emma in my arms, Alex stood beside the bed with tears shining in his eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like her mom. You did it, Sarah. You brought her into this world." Bringing Emma home to Alex's apartment felt like the beginning of a brand new chapter. Money was still tight, but we made it work with what we had. Alex continued working long hours at the garage while I focused on caring for our little girl. At night, when Emma wouldn't stop crying because of colic or teething, Alex would take turns walking her around the living room so I could get at least a few hours of sleep. He rocked her gently, sang soft songs he made up on the spot, and never once made me feel like I was burdening him. We became a little team of 3. I started taking online courses to finish my degree during the times Emma napped. Alex encouraged me every single step of the way, telling me I was doing an amazing job, even when I felt overwhelmed. He helped me believe in myself again after my parents had torn me down so completely. During those first 2 years, I slowly began to heal. The sharp pain of my parents' rejection didn't disappear overnight, but it became quieter. I poured all my love into Emma and tried to create the warm, safe family I had always dreamed of. Alex never complained about the sacrifices he was making. He treated Emma like she was his own daughter, playing silly games with her on the floor, teaching her to clap and laugh, making sure she never felt the absence of grandparents in her young life. I often lay awake at night thinking about my parents. I wondered if they ever regretted their decision, if they ever thought about the granddaughter they had never met. But the silence from their side continued, and eventually I stopped waiting for a call that never came. Life moved forward in its own quiet way. I found a stable remote job as a customer support agent that allowed me to work from home while caring for Emma. We had a small but happy daily routine: breakfast together, park walks in the afternoon, story time before bed. I thought we had finally left the past behind us and built something strong and beautiful on our own, until one quiet Sunday afternoon 3 years after that terrible night, when the doorbell rang and changed everything once again. It was a peaceful day. Emma had just turned 3 and was happily playing with her colorful building blocks on the living room floor. Soft music was playing in the background while I folded laundry on the couch. Alex was in the kitchen, humming as he stirred a pot of his famous spaghetti sauce for dinner. The smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the apartment, making everything feel warm and normal. Then the doorbell rang. At first I thought it might be a delivery or a neighbor. But when I looked through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped beating. Standing on the other side of the door were my parents. My mother looked older than I remembered. Her hair had more gray strands, and there were new lines around her eyes. My father stood beside her, holding a small gift bag in his hands. They both looked nervous, shifting their weight from foot to foot as if they weren't sure they should be there. For a long moment I couldn't move. 3 years of complete silence. 3 years of abandonment. 3 years of learning to survive without them. And now they were standing at the door of the home my brother and I had built together. The home they had never visited, never even asked about. Alex walked up behind me from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "Who is it?" he asked quietly. When I told him it was our parents, his face changed. His jaw tightened and his eyes grew serious. He had every right to be angry. He had been the one who picked up the pieces after they threw me out. He had watched me cry night after night. He had seen me struggle through pregnancy and new motherhood without any help from the people who should have been there. "Do you want me to tell them to leave?" he asked, his voice low and protective. I stood there frozen, my hand still on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut and protect the peaceful life we had created. The other part, the daughter who had once loved them so much, desperately wanted answers. Why now? After all this time? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, and slowly opened the door. The moment my mother saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "Sarah," she whispered, her voice breaking. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. We heard you had a daughter. We wanted to see her. If that's okay." The words felt like a slap across the face. After everything they had done, after disowning me when I was pregnant and scared, after months of silence, after years of pretending I didn't exist, they thought they could just show up with a gift bag and meet their granddaughter? Emma peeked curiously from behind my legs, her big brown eyes looking at the two strangers standing in the doorway. My mother's hand flew to her mouth when she saw her. "Oh, she looks just like you when you were little, Sarah. She's beautiful." That single moment unlocked everything I had buried for 3 long years. The pain, the anger, the confusion, and the deep sadness all came rushing back at once. I felt my hands start to tremble again, just like they had on that rainy night when they told me to leave. I invited them inside because I didn't know what else to do. The atmosphere in the living room became thick and tense almost immediately. Alex stood protectively near Emma, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't say a single word at first, but his presence made it very clear that he was ready to defend us if needed. My parents sat down on the edge of the couch, looking uncomfortable and out of place in the home they had never been part of. My mother kept glancing at Emma with a mixture of longing and regret. My father stared at his hands, the gift bag resting untouched on his lap. "We made a terrible mistake," my mother said after a long, heavy silence. Her voice trembled as tears slipped down her cheeks. "We were angry and scared and worried about what other people would think. We thought we were protecting the family, but we were wrong. We hurt you so deeply, Sarah, and we can never take that back." My father nodded slowly, his shoulders slumped. "We regretted it almost right away, but our pride wouldn't let us admit it. We didn't know how to fix what we had broken. Every time we thought about calling, we talked ourselves out of it. We were cowards." I listened to their words, but they felt distant. 3 years of silence couldn't be erased with one apology. "You threw me out when I was pregnant and alone," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "You told me I was no longer your daughter. You never called to see if I was okay. You never asked about your grandchild. And now you want to walk back in like nothing happened." The room went completely quiet except for the soft sound of Emma playing with her blocks. She looked up at the strangers, sensing that something important was happening, but not understanding what. My mother reached out her hand toward me but stopped halfway. "We missed so much of your life. We missed her first steps, her first words. We want to make it right, Sarah. Please give us a chance to be part of your life again." Alex finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You had 3 years to make it right. Sarah built a life without you. She raised Emma without you. We both did. You don't get to just show up now and expect everything to go back to how it was." The conversation continued for more than an hour. They apologized again and again. They explained how friends and relatives had started asking about me, which made them realize how wrong they had been. They admitted that seeing other grandparents playing with their grandchildren had broken their hearts and forced them to face what they had lost. But every apology felt hollow when I remembered the cold rain on my face the night they sent me away. It felt hollow when I thought about the lonely nights I spent worrying about how I would feed my baby. It felt hollow compared to the love and support Alex had given me every single day since then. As they spoke, I realized something powerful. Their return wasn't only about regret. It was also about facing the consequences of their choices. They were seeing the strong young woman I had become and the happy little girl who had grown up without them. They were seeing what they had missed, and what they could never get back. That evening, after my parents finally left, Alex and I sat together on the couch once Emma was asleep. The apartment felt heavier than usual. "Are you okay?" he asked me gently, placing a hand on my shoulder. I shook my head slowly. "I don't know, Alex. Part of me wants to let them back in for Emma's sake. She deserves to know her grandparents. But the other part of me remembers exactly how they made me feel, worthless, unwanted, ashamed. I don't know if I can ever trust them again." Alex nodded, understanding completely. "You don't owe them anything, Sarah. I was there through all of it. I saw how much you suffered. I saw you cry when you thought no one was watching. They don't get to decide when they come back into your life. That choice is yours now." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every word they had said. Their apologies sounded sincere on the surface, but the trust between us had been shattered too deeply to repair quickly. Forgiveness isn't something that happens in one conversation. It takes time, consistency, and real change. Over the next few weeks, my parents tried hard to show they wanted to do better. They sent thoughtful gifts for Emma. They offered to help with babysitting if I ever needed a break. They even invited us over for dinner at their house, the same house where they had once told me to leave and never come back. I went once, with Alex and Emma by my side. Walking back into that familiar living room felt strange and surreal. The furniture was the same. The photos on the wall still showed younger versions of me smiling at school events. But everything felt different now. I was no longer the scared 22-year-old girl who needed their approval. I was a mother, a survivor, a woman who had learned to stand on her own with the help of her brother. During one of those visits, my mother pulled me aside into the kitchen while Alex played with Emma in the other room. She looked at me with eyes full of sorrow and said something I will never forget. "We disowned you because we were ashamed of what other people might say about us. But losing you taught us that family isn't about pride or reputation. It's about love. Real love. And we failed you completely, Sarah. I'm so sorry." Her words touched something deep inside me. For the first time, I saw genuine remorse and self-awareness in her eyes. It didn't erase the pain, but it planted a small seed of understanding. Still, I moved slowly. I set very clear boundaries. My parents could visit Emma, but only under my supervision and only for short periods at first. They had to earn back trust through consistent actions, not just words. Alex remained cautious and protective, which gave me the confidence to take things at my own pace. Through all of this, my brother continued to be my steady anchor. He never pushed me to forgive quickly. He simply reminded me that I was strong enough to decide what was best for both me and Emma. His quiet support meant everything. Little by little, the walls I had built around my heart began to crack. Not completely, but enough to let a little healing light in. I started to see that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what happened. It was about choosing not to let the past control my future. It was about protecting my peace while giving genuine change a chance to prove itself. Today, more than 3.5 years after that rainy night when my parents turned me away, my life looks very different from what I once imagined. Emma is now a happy, energetic 4-year-old who fills our days with laughter and questions. She knows she is deeply loved by her mother and her uncle, who has been like a father to her since the day she was born. My parents are slowly becoming part of our lives again, but only on my terms. They understand that the relationship will never be the same as before. Trust must be rebuilt carefully, one day at a time. Alex and I still share the apartment. He says he isn't going anywhere until Emma is older, and we are both ready for whatever comes next. His sacrifices and unwavering support allowed me to finish my degree and start a better job. He helped turn my deepest pain into quiet strength. Looking back at everything that happened, I realize now that my parents' betrayal, as painful as it was, forced me to discover the incredible resilience inside myself. It showed me who my real family truly was, not necessarily the people who shared my blood, but the ones who chose to stay when everything fell apart. My brother's love taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. Family isn't always perfect, and it isn't always defined by titles or biology. Sometimes the greatest love comes from the person you least expect, the one who shows up quietly day after day, without asking for anything in return. And that doorbell that rang 3 years later? It didn't destroy the life I had built. Instead, it forced me to face my past, to set healthy boundaries, and to choose forgiveness only when my heart was truly ready. It reminded me how far I had come from the scared young woman standing in the rain with 2 suitcases. If you are listening to this story, and you have ever been abandoned or rejected by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, please hear this. Your worth is not decided by those who leave you. You are stronger than the pain they caused. You are capable of building a beautiful life even when the ones who should have protected you fail completely. There will always be people who choose you, people who stay through the hardest moments and help you rise again. Hold on to them tightly. Let their love remind you of your own value. And if you are someone who has hurt your child through rejection or harsh words, know that it is never too late to apologize and try to make things right. But understand that forgiveness is a gift, not a right. It must be earned through patience, consistency, and real change over time. Pride may feel important in the moment, but losing your child's trust costs far more than any reputation ever could. MY's story is not only about heartbreak and betrayal. It is about survival, about the unbreakable bond between siblings, and about the slow, sometimes painful, but ultimately beautiful process of healing old wounds. As I tuck Emma into bed each night and kiss her forehead, I feel a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected path my life has taken. The pain my parents caused led me to discover strengths I never knew I had. It led me to the kind of family love that doesn't abandon you when things get difficult. If there is one lesson I want you to carry with you after hearing everything I've shared today, it is this: family can hurt you more deeply than anyone else in the world, but sometimes the greatest love and strength come from the person you never expected to save you. Never be afraid to walk away from toxicity, even when it comes from your own parents. Protect your peace and your child's future. Build your own circle of love with the people who prove they deserve to be there at the same time. Leave a small door open in your heart for genuine change. Not because others deserve it, but because holding on to anger forever only weighs you down and steals your joy. I am no longer the frightened young woman who needed her parents' approval to feel worthy. I am a mother who fought for her daughter. I am a sister who was saved by her brother's quiet heroism. I am a woman who knows her own worth and refuses to let anyone take it away again. And that doorbell that rang 3 years later didn't break me. It reminded me exactly how far I had come, and how much stronger I had become. Thank you so much for listening to my story with an open heart. If it touched you or reminded you of your own journey, please share it with someone who might need to hear these words today. You never know who is sitting in silence, feeling alone and abandoned, waiting for a message that says they are not broken and they are not alone. Remember this always. You are stronger than the betrayal you have faced. You are worthy of real love, the kind that stays, the kind that lifts you up, the kind that chooses you even when it's hard. This is Sarah signing off for now. Take care of your heart, protect your peace, and never forget that sometimes the family you choose becomes the one that truly saves you.